Enchant!
Didn't we do that already? Yes, we did. This is part 2 of our Bloom video with her casual fit. It's going to be an extreme sewing organza. I don't know what I'm doing. There is no script. I think my Jasmine jeans will be a perfect choice for Bloom's starry jeans, and we're going to change it up a bit to keep it interesting. Quick cleanup before we start. This is a Jasmine jean pattern. It has a lace-up side closure, which we're gonna skip today. I'm just gonna make it close with Velcro in the back. It also has a lace opening in the front. We're also not gonna do that. We're gonna move the opening to the side, so this side. We're also gonna add the iconic stars. I already did some tests, and I think the way I'm gonna do it is like this, but less crooked. So hopefully that will, be a nice sort of homage. And we're gonna add some pockets, which I've prepared for you to take a screenshot of. Done? Okay.
Because I'm not an absolute madwoman, I made quick shorts to test out the new front pockets and the ties in the front, which are a pretty distinct feature in Bloom's trousers, in my opinion. I'm also going to be using 2 tones of denim, just for funsies. Let me show you how I made these fuzzy stars. With an extra piece of denim on top of my trousers, I traced the star's outline and stitched right along it, making sure I count the stitches on each leg of the star, making sure that they are even, and I pivoted at the corners. I then traced around 5mm to the inside and outside of the stitching and cut out the excess fabric, making sure to snip into the inner corners of the stars. Next, I used my hot fix tool with the iron attachment because my details were quite small, but with enough patience you can also use a regular iron to press all the stitching to the outside of the star outline. Then you need to have even more patience and start removing some of the threads from the fabric to make it fray.
Be violent. Although violence is kind of risky because you risk pulling the fibers through the stitching that you did, so be violent but cautiously. We are trusting the process. I'm gonna remove some of the loose fibers and go back in with the iron and press the fibers away.
This will take a while to make it look nice, and I really had to trust the process here because let me tell you, it looked quite bad at some point, but you just keep teasing the fabric and trimming the unruly threads and it's gonna be fine. I finished mine by adding a bit of fray check to the original stitching line to try and prevent the threads from getting loose, and it worked. I then constructed the front crotch seam of the pants so that I could add my fly detail, which I just kinda eyeballed, and continued the construction by adding the side front panels. I could then top stitch my prepared pockets onto the front and add the back panels to the fronts at the sides, making sure I stop where I want the opening to be. Jeans traditionally have a side seam pressed and top stitched to the back, but because of the opening, I have to press mine open so that I can actually hem the openings on either side. While I still have the jeans flat, I added my eyelets.
Making this little strap took longer than I wanted, would like to admit, and everything, and it doesn't even look that good, so I'm not too happy about this, and I'm also getting hungry, and I think that's part of the problem that I'm having right now.
Thankfully, a light snack resolved my hanger, and after threading the little strappy cord, I actually think it turned out pretty good. I've been re-exploring using Velcro in my projects recently, and I figured since this goes in the back, it's a good idea to use Velcro.
And then close the back underneath the Velcro, and then close the side seam, and then hem this. Since we have the opening, we can do the hem at the end. Yay!
And this is how they turned out. I especially love how they look on Dolphy Dreams. They just have such dreamy thighs.
Don't mind this.
Just look at this.
Before we get into doll hair, let's talk about your hair. Kitsch is back to sponsor the video. Yippee! And can we talk about how my rice water protein shampoo bar is hanging on for dear life? It's so skinny because literally everyone in the house keeps stealing it from me. And honestly, I'm not even mad. When everyone keeps using it, you know it's that good at cleaning your scalp and keeping it healthy. And an absolute bonus, solid bars are great for the planet too. They're plastic-free, vegan, cruelty-free, and free from what I call the phthalates, sulfates, parabens, and silicones. Basically all the things that strip moisture and leave your scalp feeling like it needs therapy. Like me.
We've been using the Rice Water Protein Shampoo and Conditioner bars because they're amazing at smoothing and strengthening. But they've got bars for all kinds of needs. Moisturizing, volumizing, sensitive scalp, you name it. And it's not just shampoo. They've got everything. Styling products, hair accessories, body care. Basically something for every routine and every hair type. If you haven't tried them yet, use our link in the description to get 25% off, which will auto-apply at checkout. And yes, they ship internationally, so you can get it no matter where you are. They ship to over 90 countries, which is kind of amazing. Now that our real hair is taken care of, let's get into some doll hair.
The first week for our first bloom, I mean that's our third bloom, so this one is fourth bloom, but whatever. Turned out very elegant and very princessy, and so I thought it's going to be a little bit too much for the casual form, so let's make something more modern and simple. I'm using plastic wrap for protection because I don't want our pretty face ruined, and making the wig cap with stretchy fabric and glue. Ideally, the fabric should match the hair color, but I didn't have any orange, so green it is. Then I can free bloom from her glue prison and match the color to the hair. Because the fiber is already straightened, I can start right away and glue the first wefts on the bottom. I don't want the hair to be too big, so I'm leaving bigger spaces between wefts than what I usually do. We want to give her a more playful and artsy vibe in this casual outfit, and what young artsy people like nowadays? Layers. So I got inspiration from mullets, shullets, and wolf cuts of the internet and made something similar. But I'm not a real hairstylist and I don't know the real techniques. And even if I did watch a few tutorials, which yeah, I did, some of the rules simply don't apply in the scale, on this type of fiber, and especially on the placement of the wefts. You know, human hair grow on the whole head, and here we have like steps made from wefts. So I won't call my wig a mullet, shallot, or a wolf cut. Let's leave it at a layered hairstyle with some spikes for a more anime look. There was a lot of hairstyling with the hair straightener. Sometimes I curled the strands this way and then that way to finally go back to the first position or even cut it completely. Before I add the top layers of hair, I'm making 2 bumps from glue and tissue paper to be a parting. Then there's a bit more gluing and curling, and then a bit more gluing and curling again. I have this lighter yellow fiber and I thought it would look cool if it peeked through the orange fiber, but later I changed my mind and covered them with a super thin layer of orange paint to make the hair look more uniform. At first, I wanted to make a spiky bangs like in the original Winx Club cartoon and our previous wig, but why doing the same thing twice? And also with the side parts of the bangs curled away of the face, she looked too much like Princess Peach and our shadow. So I did a normal human realistic bangs, cut straight and slightly curled. Then it's time to add the final portion of the hair in the crevice between the parting bumps. This technique can help you to create a nice anime-inspired kind of look. And now, it's the final styling time. Actually not, because then I restyle it slightly to make the hair fit well with the whole doll, so like lay nicely on her shoulders, but it's a final styling on the stick. To secure it, I'm adding hair gel, which also make the whole thing look more spiky. And that's how it looks, for now at least.
We wanted to change up the top a bit and make Bloom a bit more preppy and mature, so we explored a couple top options until we landed on a light yellow shirt with a vest. So let's start with the shirt part.
This is the problem. These are already 2 different fabrics, and it's also not enough. So we have to go to the emergency thrift store. Let's go.
Thankfully, we have a thrift store just a 5-minute walk away from our apartment, so I put my big girl boots on and I went straight to the men's shirt section. And I should have brought a piece of fabric with me because the lighting here sucks, but I found these 2 yellow shirts there and I got one of them, plus a women's linen shirt for like $4 total.
Okay, I'm back. Like right back. Oh, this is a pretty good match. I didn't think that was gonna be the case. Linen women's shirt. I think this is gonna look nice. I picked up this, but I now see that's a bit too beige. So this one it is. I need to drink some water.
I made the pattern available on our website, Enchanterium.com, by the way, so if you want, you can follow along. I made like 4 versions before it was good, so I put effort in this, okay? I started with a button placket because it's easiest to make the button holes, not buttholes, when the piece is flat. I mark the placement and use an automatic butthole foot, which I'll be using on the camera for the last time, and you'll see why a little later. You set it to the size of your button, but mine, the button was so small that it fell out, but it's stuck at the right setting, so I just keep it like this. It's absolutely possible to make nice buttonholes in this size, so if you have never tried, do it. I then construct the front princess seam at the backs at the shoulders and prepare the sleeves. They gather at the sides and the hem goes twice to the right side, making a cuff. Both of these features mimic a long sleeve shirt with the sleeves folded up. Now we set in the sleeves. I was blabbing here too much, so here's the gist. Sometimes sleeve good, sometimes maybe shit. Sometimes sleeves have what's called ease. That's when you gather the peak of the sleeve so there's more room for movement, which dolls don't do, but whatever. I pin the edges of the bell curve first, then manipulate the gathering stitch at the peak to make sure that the curves match in length, and continue pinning. If you want, you can snip, snip, snip the armhole, but you have to be careful not to cut too deep. I prefer not to do it. You can also focus the gather at the top or spread them evenly.
Do what you like, my dudes.
And as always, I pin fairly densely and deeply into the fabric, but most importantly, I sew from the bodice side to see any puckers before I stitch them in.
Not out of the woods yet, because this shirt has a color. But yeah, I've joined everything else. Press the seam in the back open. We're gonna snip this profusely so that the color fits in there. It's a pretty tight curve. So this is the top of the color. And I'm gonna stitch it in 3 passes. I'm gonna stitch this edge first, and then I'm gonna stitch this edge from this side because I just find it easier. And I'm gonna stop 7 millimeters away from this edge. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on this side from this side because I just find it easier. And then again, stop here because we need this to be able to fold up later.
Before I flip my collar to the right side, in order to have the best possible corners, I press the seam allowance along the stitching and trim away the corners. Some pressing later, I grab a pair of tweezers and hold the seam allowance with them while I turn the collar to the right side or whatever I'm sewing. Another press, and that's ready to set into the blouse. I mark the middle with a snip, press the top seam allowance under to keep it out of my way, and I just try my best.
It took 4 passes, but I made it in 4 passes, and that's fine. The last part here is, I prefer to do this by hand. I sneak those little seam allowances in, and I just do a whip stitch to attach this edge to this stitching that we just did, and hide all the ugly inside. And I do trim these corners a little bit before I do that. And then, you know the drill. Then we fold the sleeves in half, close up the side seams, finish the bottom edge, and then we'll attach the buttons, and it will be ready. I decided to go with gold buttons because the pants have silver eyelets and we need to give Stella something to be mad about. But other than that, I think this is done. Yay! Okay, easiest way to deal with buttons is something that my friend Chun taught me is to use a paper clip as a guide. And I pre-stretch these holes a little bit as well. So that certainly helps in most cases. Okay. Ta-da!
We now need to add the blue back with a cute vest.
Okay, for this final piece of the outfit, I have this athleisure shirt. I got some strips to use as binding, and I'm gonna try to make a vest. It would be best if this was knitted, but I can't do that. So I have a walking foot, I have a twin needle, I have a stretch needle in the machine already, and I'm gonna find some matching thread, and we're gonna stitch this up together forever. So we're gonna do the shoulder seams and then start binding everything. Now, a quick explainer on binding. I want the binding in the front to be crisscross like this.
She said while doing it wrong, pretending she can explain it to people.
Oh, this is wrong. Sorry. It actually has to be on the right side. Whoops.
At this point, I was completely oblivious to the fact that my bodice is terribly wrongly put together, and so I will link to a tutorial on how to do the binding well that I followed to learn how to do it. And now, we will all laugh at the past me, who bound everything perfectly, just to realize...
Oh no! How did I not notice this before? This one's backwards. I mean, they are both backwards, really. Because this is the wrong side. And so this should be here and this should be here. Well, I'm just gonna cut a new one. That is hilarious. So, side seams are done. I bound the bottom just now. On the new version, that's better. And normally I would do a Velcro in the back. This one was a bit tough to get on. But this fabric, even though I've used this straight stitch, has quite a lot of stretch. So I'm gonna risk it and just stitch it in the back, like so. But if your fabric is not as stretchy, you can use this as a Velcro lace. Let's see if that was a big mistake. Oh, it may have been. Ta-da!
It turned out decent, but I would recommend the Velcro approach.
The look will be completed by these stylish but simple platform mules and my new obsession, which is wrapping shoe, heels, and fabric. It's a strange obsession, I will admit.
I would like to officially pat myself on the back for finally learning mesh modeling while still in Fusion, but still. It's been a great challenge to learn a new tool, and I've been going wild making shoes recently. So I took Bloom's shoes pretty literally, but added a kind of platform heel and not a total wedge. And I was totally going to make them from wood filament, but my print came out a bit wonky and I made it wonkier trying to fix it, so I decided to wrap it in fabric. You've seen me do this in the fairy form video, but I actually did this first in real life on these shoes. I chose the fabric that didn't work for the shirt, and making shoes like this is really simple. You wrap the heel thoroughly, making sure you pinch any excess and fold it to the side that will be covered later, and trim it with something very sharp like a razor. And I make sure to smooth the fabric with something hard like the butt end of my tweezers, and then cover the excess on the bottom and with a bit of a sole material. And you also cover the top, but it is instrumental that you perform a meme before you do it.
Anyway,
I made a fabric covered sole for the top and a piece of fabric covered cardboard for the strap, and I glued them together and then glued all of that to the heel, and these turned out better than I imagined, and the fabric on the heel was a perfect choice, if I do say so myself.
To add some charm mix to the mix, I wanted to make her a pink fur purse and give you another sneak peek at my new sewing and embroidery machine combo, which I'm super excited about, but I can't talk about too much yet, but I'm gonna do some embroidery. And I'm excited! This is my excited dance. It's a stupid dance.
this is stabilizer, and I have water soluble stabilizer as well that will go on top of the fur, and the fur goes in the middle of the sandwich. And then I'm gonna try a bunch of stuff and we'll see if that works. Cool?
So my friend Sandy has unfortunately showed me the Embroidery Library and Urban Threads websites, both of which have great embroidery designs, and I got inspired by their embossed designs, and I just couldn't not try it out myself. Not to mention, I wanted an embroidery machine for years now, and now I have one, so I was very excited to just finally do some very cool stuff.
I think we should be able to remove some of it just by tearing it off, especially where the stitching was pretty dense, but the rest is not going to come out, so we're gonna have to wet it.
After washing and drying, I liked the inset heart on the heart-shaped purse the most, so I embroidered one more and got to cutting.
Everyone always tells me to cut from the back, and I never was able to until I use a razor blade. And do you know one thing about razor blades is that they're super sharp. So this actually cuts like butter. I need to do it this time. Usually I don't care and just slice through everything, but I want to preserve the edges, the fur on the edges, so that I can glue this all together on a paper base. So, oh, don't do that. Don't cut yourself. Don't do that. Not again this week, Barb, please. Beautiful preserved edges and virtually no fur in the air. This is it. Amazing!
I made myself a paper template that matched the size of the fur hearts and glued it together. I added 2 loops to add a strap later and covered the sides with fur strips, keeping in mind the fur direction. I then added the embossed heart, and the purse is ready for a strap.
As always, the final step is to put everything together and decide what little details and accessories will suit the look. I'll be adding some sparkly things to the pants, putting the bag together, and adding some bracelets, and in the meantime,
let's thank our top Lost Sister tier supporters, unchangedly Stephanie Deer, Adia Bear, Barb from the Future, and Red X. Let's also thank our cousin tier patrons, Megan Pierce, Asha Hasuna, Zari, Nailini, Reese's Cup, Candy Guts, Art Boxy, Willa Vanilla, Hope Zed, North Soul, Laurenth, Sofa Cushion, Angel Silver Rose, Vibrant Sprite, Malachite, Alienite, Whimsy, Whitetails, Hannah, Kito Kato, Krista Hopper, Dull Dragon, Eden Cassidy, Leandros Things, DM Bakairona Smith, Melissa Novoa, Rinth, Fan of TA, Ashley, Mikey Lemon, Andrea Select Arcane, Brielty, Stephanie, Karaho, Jane Beck, Caribou, Ninja Star Dozino, Dream Up, and last but not least, Catherine Nodden. I also wanted to give a shout out to our BFF tier YouTube supporter, Robin Vandy Bush. Sorry, Robin. You've joined our YouTube supporter page and we never get notified that you joined it, and we've been kind of ignoring you for the past 8 months, so we're very, very sorry, and please email me. Sorry, and we love you, and thank you so much for your support.
So this is how I restyled the hair to look nicely on her shoulders, and also added a tiny bit of orange paint to the yellow strands. Then I thought a pair of hair clips would be cool, so I cut the shape out of vinyl sticker, added a layer of UV gel to build a thicker base, then painted them pink, because the purse is pink, so pink is tying it together, and then glossed them with one more coat of UV resin. And to add some more cuteness, I glued pink glitter hearts around it. And with that little detail, she's ready.
This is how she turned out. I honestly had such a blast creating Bloom's casual wardrobe. It has been my dream to make the Winx series with double outfits and really let them transform. I hope you like the direction we're taking these girls to. I want them to be, attending college and not being so soft rebooted into being kids again. Like, I want the fashion back in Winx. Make Winx fashion again. I want them to be based on pop culture icons like the original, Preferably we'd go back to the hand-animated style, hand-drawn style, or at least have good graphics like Cape of Demon Hunters that you guys keep pestering us about. But I know this is all wishful thinking, so we will just create our own and make them good. If you've been looking for some new hair care products, make sure to check our Kitsch's deal through the link in the description. And as always, make sure to follow us on Instagram for some sneak peeks and subscribe for future videos. Have an enchanted day, and we'll see you next time. Bye!
Time for a funny blooper, haha. No, but seriously, check out the campaigns for Heba and Mohamed. They live in Gaza and they need our help. Thank you for all the donations so far.